So Bill, with a lifelong passion for all things paranormal, Bill's been in the field of the paranormal and research for 39 years and has been fortunate enough to investigate paranormal phenomenon across the world, including the USA and the UK. Along with his wife Amanda, he's co-founder of the Australian Paranormal Society, which he formed 15 years ago. Bill and Amanda are both authors and have appeared on many TV and radio programs and in many books, magazines regarding the paranormal. They believe in educating the public to bring the paranormal into the mainstream of society and by being open and using media and events to build an educated understanding of the field.
Well, thank you, Caroline. Thank you very, very much, guys. Thank you for turning up, guys. I appreciate it, and I hope you find this interesting. Yeah, I've been around quite a long time, and we have our own ways we do things here, and a big part of it is actually telling people to go out there and get experiences. And it's for us people. The focus is on evidence gathering in most investigations, but the big thing people miss out on is having experiences and finding what's out there. Exploring. I hear people call people paranormal experts. I actually prefer the term paranormal explorers because it allows us to go out there and actually find things beyond our own little world. So there's two things I'm going to talk about tonight. One thing is paranormal travel. Just give you a bit of my thoughts. I love to travel. A bit of my thoughts on a few tips and things that you might take away. Nothing major, nothing too in depth, but give you a little bit of the idea of how I sort of plan things for myself or put things together when I'm going to go somewhere new, especially. And then I'm going to talk about a passion of mine, which is my local main city, the city of Melbourne, the state of Victoria in Australia. And I grew up in Melbourne, and it's amazing for such a young town, it's amazing how much is in there. But we'll get into that a bit more. So, all right. So let's start. Simple question: who doesn't like to travel? A lot of people don't, but majority of people, would love to get out there and explore locations that are outside their normal world. For example, just recently we were able to hit the United States for nearly a month, doing work at different locations, including Alcatraz. We worked around the Alamo. We worked in Gettysburg for nearly a week. We were able to investigate there. We hit the Myrtles Plantation. This all in New Orleans. This was such a passion for us to be able to go to these places and experience what's there, because we're not here for a long time, right? We were here because for a short time, we might as well make the most of it. Now, I have a little bit of a sort of schedule, a bit of a tip sequence that I use when I plan my travels, and to try to get the most out of these what I call paranormal travels, or in these days I call it black tourism, but I prefer paranormal travels. It doesn't sound as dark or as nasty. So let's go through a couple of these. All right. So my big thing is always have a plan. Okay. Once you've decided where you want to go, when you want to go, etc., make a plan. Take your time, work out what you want to see. Why are you going there? For example, you go to San Francisco, as the picture says on the side there. It's that's Alcatraz. That is actually taken from the hotel that I booked for us. So what a great view, But work out where you want to go. Work out what you want to do there. Take your time. What's a must do? What's I'd like to do, and how much time do I have? The thing is, everything, your plan obviously and your trip relies on, as I said, two things: your time, for starters, how much time do you have available to travel, and your budget. Because not everyone has the has the funds to stay in, the Ritz-Carlton, but, work out what you can do, work out your budget, how much you want to spend, try to stay within that. And, this is not paranormal, but it's basically simple trip planning. So keep that in mind. But that's a big thing, because what that does by planning, it allows you to hit paranormal or haunted locations. You work out before you go. That way you don't get there. There's so much to choose from, and you miss a lot of things. Plan. All right. Now the second one, the big one for me, is accommodation. One, again, this goes down to your budget, but be aware. Get yourself somewhere decent, somewhere safe. You don't want to be. I went to my first trip to the States. I traveled from straight to Philadelphia. I was going to meet a couple of investigators there the next morning, and or the next day, I should say. And I booked a hotel that I thought was really nice, seemed really nice. And when I actually got there, it was in the middle of a pretty rough area, and yeah, it was. Made sure my door was locked that night, I can tell you. So choose your accommodation well. But some ideas are, I'd like to stay near where I'm going to, places I want to see. So for example, if you're in Philadelphia, there's the Historic Center where you have the Independence Hall and Liberty Bell and those sort of things. And, if you stay at a hotel near there, you don't have to worry about transport. You can walk there, you can do all that. And an example, I go to San Antonio in Texas quite a bit because I have really good friends and family. And I stay at the Menga Hotel, which is that picture on the side there, which is a beautiful old hotel. It is literally, you walk out the front door, walk across a street, and the Alamo is there. That's how close it is. So, I can walk out, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can walk out there and wander around the outside of the Alamo and, take some recordings, take some photos, do what I want, When I look at hotels, I look at the history of these locations. So, I look for places that have, possible hauntings. Why not? If you're going to spend money on a hotel and you're there to do paranormal investigating or research or just experiences, then, why not stay at a place that's actually got a reputation? And again, I'll go back to the Alamo the Menga Hotel here. It has quite a number of spirits that are reputedly there. And I have had some experiences there and captured a few good pieces of evidence. So why not, pick your hotels. If you're spending money on it, you might as well use something that you're really interested in. Take that as an extra. So you can, if you pick the right accommodation, you're close to where you want to be. You can leave your equipment running all night. You can record all night. You can set cameras up all night. A lot of the time with these hotels, with the Menga, you can wander around with a camera. You can, at any time of the day, they're not gonna stop you as long as you're not disturbing other guests. You're pretty much right. They're very accommodating wherever you go. Most places. All right. Now, the third tip is to hook up. If you're going somewhere, for example, I'm not sure where everyone's from, but like I have great friends in the UK, have great friends in the States, all through the paranormal that I've met online most and chatted with for a long time and made great friends. The picture there is from again from the States. This is in Gettysburg. We did an event there with the Kling brothers. You can see the Kling brothers there, the two blokes in the front there with the sunglasses on. It's if you hook up with these people with other groups in the area, they can provide you with information. They can give you places to go to. They can provide you with local knowledge, and that's what you want. In a lot of cases, what they will do is they might have even locations they can say, "Hey, come along with us. When you're here, let us know, and we'll take you on an investigation." And that's happened. That's happened to us, which has been great. These people are locals. It's like if we come to your town, and we chat. you might say, look, I know a couple of places. I can't go there. I don't want, but, while you're here, I'm busy, but you can go and visit, or I'm going there, come with us. And we'll go and, it gives you more experiences. And also, they might even be able to run you around. They might even say, look, I've got a car. We'll go and look at a few places and take you around. That's happened to me. And, the thing is, in Gettysburg, when we were in Gettysburg, it was right at the end of our trip. Unfortunately, both my son and my wife got ill. It was just a flu, not we've been busy for, 3.5 weeks, and they just got a bit run down and picked something up. So, but where we were staying, we were in the town, but there was no chemists or pharmacies around. So luckily what we'd done is we'd actually, Amanda, the lady who runs Ghost of Gettysburg tours, she is a big fan of my wife, of Amanda. And you might know my wife, actually. She's got a big following all across the globe. Her page is Haunted Old and Beautiful by Amanda APS. And what she does is this lady really liked her stuff and was a big admirer. And someone said from her work, go and visit Christina. So we went and visited Christina. I'd already booked the Jenny Wade house and booked a bunch of people, a bunch of locations there. But she said to us, hey, next time you're here, just let us know and we'll get you in. So that's good. That's great. That's fantastic. She was lovely to us. But on the tour, we had one of her guides, a gentleman called Rick. Rick was a good guy, actually, a really, really friendly, really knowledgeable of the area. And he was supposed to just open for us and wait outside. I said, no, you've got to wait. Come down with us in the off-ditch, for example. We went down into the basement. I said, come down, see what we do. And we had a great time down there. But we exchanged, Facebooks and things like that, which you do, et cetera, phone numbers and such. And unfortunately, with Mandy and Mackenzie feeling a little bit ill, I needed to get to a pharmacy. I had no way to get around there. There were the taxis and Ubers are basically non-existent in Gettysburg. So I contacted Rick and I said, mate, is there any chance of you running me to a pharmacy? And he was more than willing. Him and his wife come down. They picked me up, took me to a pharmacy. I picked up what I needed, dropped that off, and then he took me on a tour of some haunted bridges, which was, unexpected, and it was great. So we got a little bit of local knowledge. We've got, we've made friends. We still keep in contact. That's the sort of things that you might get. You build these relationships across the globe. It gives you opportunities to go back and, when you're planning, or when you're there, to actually see what you might not see otherwise. All right, so get creative. There's locations. I'm sure there's locations where you're all from that they don't have investigations run at night. They don't allow it, or they don't have a tour you can go on at night. And a lot of people will get disheartened. Everyone wants to get locked into a jail. That picture there is the old Melbourne jail down here in Melbourne. We'll talk about that soon. And what so what do you do? How do you get some time in there? Well, you get a little bit creative. What I do, and this is my trick, is I contact the location and I try to find out what their quieter times are. So, when's your quietest time? It could be when they first open. It could be just before they close. It could be in the middle of the day. It just depends. But the staff, the locals will know when it's quietest. The people that work there, the people that spend time there will tell you when it's quietest. So you look for the quietest time, get in there. You may not be able to do any investigating, but at least you can spend some time when there's not, 100 people running around you. And you can have a voice recorder running, or, you can take photos without a bunch of people in front of you. A good example is Alcatraz, which I spoke about, which I showed you earlier, where the photo was. If you go on the day tour there, it's flat out. It's busy. It's very, very busy. And what you really should do, what they do is they have ferries leaving all the time during the day, arriving and leaving. And there is, obviously the last ferry. So what I do is, or what I did the first time I was here, first time I visited Alcatraz, is I went during the day and I waited for the last ferry. Now, that's about 45 minutes, hour gap. And what happened was the place cleared out. There was maybe 4 or 5 people in the whole location apart from the employees, and I was able to get down to where the solitary cells were, for example, and there was no one in there. And I, was able to shut myself in a solitary cell, do a bit of reporting, and take some photos, and that was a great location. Another one is there's an old fort in Philadelphia, and I know I'm talking about America, but I'll explain why. Because there's a lot of locations that we can get to where we can't get to in Australia. But there's a location in Philadelphia called Fort Mifflin, which is an old fort that's been around since the American Revolution, right through to World War II. And I went to this place to explore it during the day, and got there as soon as it opened. I walked in the place. There was one employee at a building outside the fort. I walked into the location, and I had 2.5, nearly 3 hours there by myself before another person turned up. So I was able to go down into the casemates, they call them, which is underground bunkers, and do recordings, do some filming, do photography, without anyone around. And I had a lot of experiences there. For example, there's the legend of a screaming woman, and I actually heard her. I heard her. I was sitting having a break because it was very hot at this point, just out on the bench, and a horse galloped by that wasn't there. I couldn't see it. It was a spirit horse, and things like that. I heard my name called. So there was a lot going on during the day. You don't need to investigate at night. Trust me. So things like that, if you time it and you work out when these places are quiet, you can get some time in these locations, and work to your advantage rather than just give up. But anyway, if you can't, if it's busy the whole time, still go and experience these locations, right? While you travel, experience them anyway. All right. And have fun and make memories. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of people is they become so focused on what they want, the paranormal and everything, is that they miss out on a lot. They miss out on, being a tourist, being a normal tourist, going and experiencing the normal things, the daytime things, the things that aren't paranormal. Especially if you've got other people with you, if you've got people that aren't really into the paranormal, your wife, your husband, your kids, you need to be open to doing other things. And what that does is that allows you to experience these locations on a different level than you would as a paranormal investigator, and it allows you to make memories. So I would say go and enjoy and make memories. As you can see there, that's my wife and my son, and we were in San Francisco heading from Pier 39 to Alcatraz, and it was probably a 10-15 minute walk, but we decided to take these pedicabs or whatever they're called, and it was a lot of fun. So, make memories. We have that memory now, forever. But if you're going to travel, make sure, one, you have a plan, make sure you're safe, make sure, you know what you're doing, you're in control. When I say have a plan, that's the overall plan, but be flexible. When something's flexible, it doesn't break. If you're not flexible and you can't change plans and adjust, you might ruin your trip. You might not enjoy what you're doing. So all this is to try to make any traveling that you do in regards to maybe having paranormal experiences a little bit easier. It gives you a little bit of more guidance, rather than just turning up and hoping for the best. So I hope that sort of helped you, if you're ever going to do any paranormal traveling, to put it together, a holiday, a trip, a tour, whatever you want to call it, that will work for you and will give you the best experience you can. Now, one of the other services we do as paranormal researchers is we have people come to us and ask for itineraries. So we will, if someone's coming to Australia, or going anywhere, let us know, and we can help put together a schedule for you that might it might actually, help you have a better holiday than you might. So, we have people come to us and they say, we want to go here and here and here, wherever they are. And, we're going to be in Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. And we can pick and choose for these guys, say, work out what they want and find the places, give it back to them, and they can book what they want. They can plan the trip a lot easier. So we're always open to helping people. All right, let's move on. All right, Ghosts of Melbourne, the CBD. The picture on the side there is one of my books. It's actually based on a walking tour I used to run. I haven't run it for a while. I unfortunately had an injury where it slowed me down for about 3.5 years, and I'm sort of just getting back into it properly as we speak. But that will start up again. Now, Melbourne itself it's a great city. It's an absolutely brilliant city. It's friendly. It has a great nightlife, great coffee culture. If you're into coffee, like me, I love my coffee. Restaurants, theatre, etc. It's a beautiful city. Now, Melbourne was founded in 1835. That means it's only 190 years old. So it's quite young compared to cities around the world. London's a couple of thousand years old. It pales in comparison into the age. Now, people say to me, how can a location that's so young be so haunted? And there are a great deal of hauntings in my books. I haven't done all the locations that have come up. There will be other volumes, but there's 33 locations just in the CBD that I have in that book, and I could probably do the same again for volume 2, which is in the planning. But what I say to people is Melbourne, yes, it's only 190 years this year old, but it has had so much crammed into those 90 years. The energy itself of the place is crazy. We've had gold rushes, we've had constructions, we've had there's been strife and turmoil, there's been industrial strife, there's been gangland wars, there's been so much happening in this location, that in such a short period of time that the energy to me is compressed, and that's why it's so active. Now, places like, as you can see on the building on the right there, the old picture up the end of that's our Parliament House, there's spirits everywhere. And that for one is haunted. And I will go through. I've picked about 5 or 6 locations for us to go through, and just so you get a good taste of what Melbourne is. Now, talking about travel, this is what this is about. Find someone who knows the place you're going to. If you're coming to Melbourne, let me know, and I can hit you in the right direction. You can grab my book even, and that's a tour book. That's for you to take with you and go to these locations. It will tell you the history of the place, and it will tell you the paranormal history. You can do that yourself, but reach out to anyone with a little bit of knowledge, and I'm sure they'll help you. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Doesn't matter. You'll find someone that will be nice and will help you. Now, Melbourne, as I said, 190 years old, my hometown. I love it, and let's go through a few locations, and I'll tell you a little bit about each. All right, this is our state library. It was constructed in 1853. It's a massive building and big history. It's actually 27 buildings put into one, basically. So they've basically connected up 27 buildings, and created this amazing location. Now I run a tour there, basically Haunted Histories tour, we call it, for the State Library. And there's a bunch of ghosts in here that, for want of a better word, a bunch of spirits. And now how I get my research, a lot of the places I have been able to investigate, some you cannot investigate as yet. My information for the book, for my research, for my tours, is gathered through one, stories that have been put out there, 2, interviewing the people involved, people that work there, the people that have, have these stories up, and my own experiences. I mean, once I get into this here, I haven't investigated the state library because at the moment they don't allow that, but they allow a ghost tour. And what they do is during that, I talk about all these different ghosts. But while I was researching, I used to go there quite a bit to do research. I have a really good paranormal section. And I had an experience there, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the place itself is it's an amazing location. On the left there, you'll see what's called the Dome Reading Room. It's an amazing building and one of the galleries for books. Now, this location itself there's about 7 main spirits that we deal with, that we talk about during the tour. We have several women, female spirits. One of them is a librarian, all in white, and she actually is found around the children's section. We believe she was that was her area where she worked. Now, there is a story about her where she actually cleans up, and she cleans up books that have been left out. People come, they'll see there's a mess and there's not a mess, things like that. There's no negativity with her, but there is a story of a young child who was in the children's section there and fell over, and the parents looked over, saw the child had fallen. There was a lady there in a white dress helping this child up, and they rushed over. Oh, the child was crying. You're all right. Da da da. Look around, and this lady in white is gone. So things like that, stories which are quite nice. Then you have a lady in red. Now this place here, they actually had. It wasn't just a library to start with; it was a gallery. It actually housed the Melbourne Museum up until 1997, and it housed the National Gallery of Victoria, the artworks and such, up until 1968, sorry. And so it's had a lot going on there. Now, during that times, they also had open areas, ballrooms and such, or areas where they could run balls, and they had balls, dances and such. And there's a spirit in here that we don't know anything about. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to track anything down, but she is seen wearing a red ball gown and is seen all over the place. Now, the location itself only had 1 reported death in there. Actually, I lied. Sorry, it's had no reported deaths. Now, what my theory is with places like this is that in the older days, the record keeping was a little bit different. So, someone might have had a heart attack, taken away to the local hospital, which actually there was a hospital right next door, and passed away. So they may not class that as a death there. They may have died on location, but be taken next door. And so there was no records of the death, any deaths there. So that's one idea. And maybe, or maybe people have returned because they find this place, comforting. And this lady might be one of them. There's another lady called Grace, and she used to run the arts section, which is up the front. It's now basically a study area and a cafe, and she's seen down there. And there is also another spirit there that's quite, I don't want to say nasty, but aggressive. He's quite full on, and he can cause quite a bit of mischief. Now, the people I've interviewed, the previous owners of the cafe, and they told us about that they would ask Grace when things were getting messed up or mixed around by this other spirit, that they would ask Grace to come and help. How they knew about Grace, I don't know. And when they did that, things would stop. So I find that quite interesting. Like, Grace must have been in charge, obviously. So a couple of the other spirits, one of them appears in the dome room there. As you can see down the bottom, there's a number of long study desks. Each of them has a lamp. And there's one spirit that actually plays with these with the electric, so they'll turn the lamps off and turn the lamps on. they'll people are trying to study and the lamp will turn off. Now, a friend of mine actually was in there studying and come to me a number of years ago before I put the tour together and said to me, "Oh, I had a strange experience." They weren't believers as such. They were, I mean, they weren't close to it, but they weren't paranormal investigators. So I had a strange experience. And I said, "What was that?" And they were studying and they said, "The lamp turned off." And they thought the globe had blown or something. So they moved desk. And when they got to the other desk, about 30 seconds later, that lamp turned off. And they ended up moving again. The lamp didn't turn off. But I thought that was quite interesting. Two lamps in that whole area where the one person moved to, both turned off. Statistically, pretty high that it's not a natural occurring phenomenon, but we can't say for sure. But it is an interesting phenomenon that's happened, or an incident that happened. And the last one is actually a spirit that I've encountered. I actually encountered him in the room on the right-hand side there. Down on if you can see the bookshelves on the bottom left-hand side, that's where the paranormal section is. And I was wandering around there in my own little world. I had a couple of books in my hands. I was looking down at something. Now, this spirit actually tries to scare people. He jumps out and he actually gives people a shock. And he sort of appears in front of them and such. Now, I turned the corner and I sort of jumped because there was someone in front of me. But when I looked properly, there was no one there. And I thought I was just, in my mind, I was in my own little world. I didn't think of it at the time. When I left the library, and I take the train station. I take the train there. So there's a train station just across the road. And I had this experience. I'm sitting on the train afterwards and I'm thinking, how did I not pick that up? This was really, and it felt really weird. But for me, in my own little world, my own little thoughts, I was completely distracted. And I shouldn't, it's a rookie mistake. I shouldn't have just ignored it. I should have gone with it and seen if I could, feel anything else or, anything. Turned my, recorder on and maybe got something. But it was, for me, that was an experience. All right, let's move on. All right, so we have the Queen Victoria Market. Now, this is a huge market, as you can see on that left-hand side there. It goes all the way around. If you can see the car parking, the top part there, that's the market from this front part here, all the way down, all those roofs, those beige-coloured roofs, and around to the car park. That's all Queen Victoria Market. It's a massive location. The location itself was actually, before the market was built, is actually Melbourne's second cemetery. The first being at what's called Flagstaff Gardens. There was only 7 burials there. And that place is haunted as well, but we don't cover that today. But this location here was Melbourne's second cemetery before the cemetery was closed and the market was built. Now, where that car park it is at the back there, there is believed to still be at least 10,000 bodies buried there, which is a hell of a lot of bodies. And if you imagine if there is any spirits there, that they would be quite upset about having something like the Queen Victoria Market built over that. Now, the market itself also was part of gangland war during the 50s and 60s, which was the Grocers' War, the Fruiterers' War. And there was quite a few people killed. So you can imagine there was violence, there was hate, there was all this energy. The market itself is very high energy. There's a lot going on there. And it's a really interesting location. As you can see here, there's outside markets and there's inside markets on the left-hand side there. But if we go back to it being a cemetery, there's actually quite a few stories here and we've investigated the place and we've had our own experiences there. Now, the spirits that inhabit this place, firstly, there's quite a few, but the main ones are, there's actually we call bandits bush rangers. There was a group of bush rangers. It was actually 4 bush rangers, and they were captured in a shootout. One of them was killed, and the other 3 were sent for trial and were all hung. Now, they were brought here and buried, and they are seen around the place. They're actually seen, especially at night. They're still busy here. There's still trucks and things coming and going, but there's these apparitions are actually seen. People actually assume they're the Manders because there's a group of three. The fourth one was buried somewhere else, and they were dressed in the colonial clothes. They were just, how they would have been dressed when they were out doing their trade. Uh, Another two spirits that are here are of two Aboriginal men. The first two Aboriginals hung in the colony, and they were actually hung for basically defending their land. A white settler come in, and they didn't know any different, so they defended their land. They actually speared this man and killed him, and they were captured. They didn't speak any English. There was no translators used during their trial. They had no idea what was going on at the time, and they were actually hung. Now, because of the times, they wouldn't let them be buried in the cemetery itself, so they actually created a small area outside the cemetery for these two Aboriginal men to be buried. It's quite horrible, really. Up until the end, they sort of, I believe it towards the end, they realized what was going to happen. One had taken it pretty well, as expected, but the other one was very, very distraught. They were hung and they were buried there. Now, the problem is, in Aboriginal beliefs, they have their own burial customs, they have their own funerary customs, and these weren't adhered to. So there's actually the two gentlemen are seen wandering the location. Now, we had an experience during one of our investigations. If you can imagine trolleys full of groceries, they're packed like what they put up in a plane, those sort of boxes where they stack things in. And there was one of these in the middle of this open area, and I was there with a couple of investigators, and we saw this dark figure pop its head out and look back. And we both saw it, and we thought, oh, there's someone there. It's got to be someone there, because it was so solid, so real. But we spread out, we went left and right and went wide around, and there was nowhere for this figure to go. Excuse me. And by the time we looked around the corner, they were gone. There was nothing there. Now, the other thing that happens here is there's a shadow people seen all the time. There's a lot of stuff going on. The place is high energy, so it's not surprising that a lot happens there. All right. Flinders Street Station. This is iconic Melbourne, really, to be honest. The building itself, ironically, was apparent. The plans for this building. Now, this is a legend, and the validity of it, it's not 100% proved, but the plans for this station were actually mixed up with a train station plans for Bombay, India, at the time. Bombay being the word then, the name then. And so this building was supposed to be built in India, and their plans, the last station, was supposed to be built here. But having fate having its way, it was built here. And as you can see on the right-hand side there, the clocks above the stairs. Now, this building is iconic, and anyone going to Melbourne to meet someone, especially back in the day before we had mobile phones, the old phrase was, "We'll meet you underneath the clocks," would be used, and that's what they mean, the Flinders Street clocks. Now, there's quite a few spirits here, but the main one I like to speak about is, as you can see, the old station there without the clocks. The old station, it has a lot of spirits, but the main one I like to speak about is a gentleman, an Asian gentleman, we believe Chinese, who's seen on platform 10. Now, if I go back, you can see behind the building on the left hand there, there's a waterway, a river. That's called the Yarra River. Now, that's quite a big river. It's, in the old days, they used to fish there. So this gentleman that we see sitting on platform 10 being the river, the platform closest to the river, is, as I said, an Asian gentleman, and he's sitting there with his fishing pole and his bag, and he smiles at people, but then vanishes. So it's been seen for many years, and what it's believed is he was there back in the day, fishing, and they believe he slipped in and drowned, and that's why his spirit's still there. But he seems to be intelligent. He seems to, and he smiles at people, and as I said, vanishes. So I don't know why he stays there. But it's an interesting story and one of my favorites because it's quite gentle, and the way he smiles at people, it's not everything paranormal is dark and dangerous. Let's put it that way. All right, the old Treasury building. This is one of my favorite buildings. All right, this is where the wealth of the colony was stored. So when the gold came in from the gold fields, this is where it went. This is where everything was stored underneath in the gold vaults. Now, this building is pretty much there's offices up the top there, but the underneath is basically a museum now. And you can, when you come to Melbourne, as I said, you need people with knowledge. You can enter this location for gold coin donation. I think it is maybe $1 or $2, and sometimes it's free. So you can go downstairs, have a look at the gold vaults, and the caretaker's house, which is actually down in the basement as well, which is really interesting. But there are several spirits, and my favorite is a gentleman who is actually not down in the gold vaults, but he's up in the offices, and he doesn't really like men. He likes women. And the many stories I've investigated here, but I haven't encountered him. But the many stories I've heard is that some men, when they're especially working later, they will get spooked and they will feel like they're being harassed. And many have run out of the building, run down the stairs and out the building. Whereas the women, what they will do is they will come in and without pressing the elevator, the doors will open, or a door will swing open for them to walk through, especially if they're carrying something. So he tends to be quite nice to the women, and lights will switch on when they're going into a room, etc. But not very fond of men. So to me, it's really interesting. But as you can see on the left-hand side there, that's up one end of the gold vaults. Excuse me, I'm stuttering. It was there was a lot of gold kept there because the gold fields in Melbourne in the 1850s were insanely profitable. But the caretaker lived down there as well. So he looked after the place and was, I suppose, a security guard at the same time. Now, this place here, Old Melbourne Jail, 135 hangings in its time. It has been a normal prison, a military prison, and has a lot of activity. Everything from there was a docent in there who told me a story which I actually really liked. He said, I went for a tea break and I put the kettle on. An electric kettle sits on top of a base. I sat back and was just sort of relaxing a little bit. And he said, it's not a very big kitchen. It's got a bench on each side. And I witnessed the kettle lifting up and actually moving across and being placed on the other bench. Things like that, little things I find really interesting. But the jail itself was, as I said, the execution site for 135 prisoners. And one of them being the infamous bushranger Ned Kelly. Now, if anyone knows Ned Kelly or of Ned Kelly actually wore armor. He made a suit of armor that he fought the police in. And his downfall was that he didn't really put any leg armor on. And he got shot in the leg and eventually captured. And he was hung here. But I've investigated this place several times, and we haven't come across him in any of the locations that he is reputedly associated with. There are other ones here that are more interesting for me. There was a gentleman called Frederick Deeming who was hung here. Frederick Deeming was a Englishman, nothing against Englishmen, but he was married. He had several kids. He went off and met someone else that he married, then come back and murdered his wife and children and buried them under the hearthstone. Took his new wife and moved to Melbourne. He lived in a suburb called Windsor, and eventually he killed that wife and buried her under the hearthstone before taking off to Western Australia, courting another woman, before being caught. Now, the thing is, when he was captured, where his history was that he was in Whitechapel at the time of the Ripper murders. And there are several American newspapers that put up articles of Jack the Ripper caught in Australia and such. There's no proof of it, but he was a nasty piece of work, and he was hung here. Now, this place has a lot of spirits. I've had quite a few experiences, but the worst probably being is with my wife Amanda. She was actually attacked under the gallows, which we'll see in the next picture. On the left-hand side there, you'll see the gallows. We were down the bottom on the ground floor. My daughter was up the top, pretty much where the photo's taken from, taking photos of us downstairs. And we were in there, and this was an investigation. Amanda said, "There's something here." And Amanda's a very good medium. She protects herself very well. And it's very switched on. But all of a sudden she keels over. She says it feels like a bit stabbed. She couldn't stand up. She couldn't walk. She was in a hell of a lot of pain. And my instinct is I have to get her out of there. So I pick her up and I carry her out. I had my eldest son and my daughter with us, and we all went out the front. And it took me about 45 minutes to bring her back to normal. Now, that itself is interesting because it was not a physical ailment. It was a spiritual attack, and she picked that up. But gathered our equipment, bring it back. And my daughter had a camera that I grabbed, and I put it somewhere, and I didn't look at it at the time. And probably a month or 6 weeks later, I actually realized I haven't downloaded the camera. When I downloaded the camera, right near where Amanda was attacked, there's a picture of an entity, human body, but the head is completely deformed and it looks almost demonic. So my theory, and in these places, I investigate places and have worked at places, I've slept in places, asylums, Arrowdale Asylum, which is the biggest asylum was the biggest asylum in the Southern Hemisphere. These places that have, mental illness or crime, the dark energies of these people attract these non-human entities, and they thrive on that stored energy. They thrive on that pain and that suffering of the criminals or the insane. And it's the location itself is great. It's a great historic location. There's a lot in there, but it is definitely haunted. And I suggest anyone gets here, get to the old Melbourne jail, have a look around. It's a great location. One last location for us is the Victorian Trades Hall building. I actually run paranormal tours here. It's a great location. It actually is really active. It is the oldest running trades hall. That means where union organizations reside. There's a lot of different unions in there, as well as different organizations that operate similar to them. And it's a hive of activity. But back in the day, there was, especially in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of union and a lot of work, a lot of union fights. There was a lot of crime involved with unions. So even though the location is actually only one reported death, that being of a policeman who was killed back in 1906, these three characters on the right-hand side there were committing a robbery. A Constable David McGrath, he actually heard some banging and crashing in the actual building itself, called his fellow policemen. They went in there, they went up the front stairs. David McGrath went around the back to get to the back of these guys, and they turned around and they shot him. Now, they were saying they were shooting for his hand, but they killed him. The three of them were arrested. Gun battle happened. The three of them were arrested. And Jackson was the one that actually killed the policeman. So he was hung. And the other two got to 5 and 6 years in jail. And he was hung. Jackson was hung at the old Melbourne jail, which we just looked at. Now, during our sessions there, we've contacted a lot of different spirits, a lot of unionists, a lot of different, even military people, because they were quite involved with during the war and such. So we've had a lot of different people come in to talk to us, and we actually received information. And we said one of the questions I asked to this spirit we were chatting to was, I can't remember what we were using when we got the contact, but I said, so there's only one reported death here. And the spirit replied with that you know of. So I thought that was quite funny, and it's an interesting response. So, but there is quite a lot of activity here. The picture on the side there, on the left-hand side, is actually the council chambers, which was used before the Parliament House was finished for government. So, but overall, Melbourne itself is. It's a great location. If you're heading this way, let us know, and we will give you a rundown on where you should visit, where you can investigate, who to speak to, and who to see. Not just Melbourne, any location. I hope this was informative for you, and gives you something to think about. So next time you're planning a trip, take on the tips that I gave you. Now, a little bit of advertising for me. I'm sorry, guys, I'm sneaking this in. Is if you're interested in reading, we have a bunch of books out. The top 3 are Amanda's books. The bottom 2 are mine. Ghosts of Arradale Asylum. We spent a lot of time in Arradale, weekends locked in there, sleeping in there, etc. So I run tours there. It's a great location. Ghosts of Melbourne, as I said, we just spoke about. Now, the top ones there, the first 2 are for people that are more psychically inclined. Amanda is a great medium. She works on cold cases with the police, and is really so she surprises me still. And I'm not saying that because she's my wife, but she is a great medium. The book on the right there of hers is about her life, which is a really interesting read. If you need us, and I'm sure you can ask Caroline for these, but we have the Australian Paranormal Society and Haunted Old and Beautiful by Amanda, APS. They both have great information on there. You're quite welcome to jump on there and join up, and send us a message, ask us questions. And I will promote, just brand new is our YouTube channel, Paranormal Explorers and Travel Planners. So, if you're interested, jump on board and check it out. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for watching, and I will hand back to Caroline. Thank you.
Bill, thank you so much on behalf of ASSAP and members. First time that you have spoken for us in ASSAP on a webinar, and I'm very sure it won't be the last. I'll contact you in the next few days, and perhaps we can book you in for the next one in about 6 months or so. Give you plenty of time to write something else up for us. Incredible opportunity to talk about Australia. Not somewhere that we've had many. I can't actually even think about any webinars that we've had that have dealt with Australia. Not to the depth that you've gone through, and it was interesting hearing about particular areas that you've pointed out. Myself, I like your thinking about daytime and not nighttime for doing vigils. You don't have to. I live in a haunted house, and do you know, most of the stuff happens in the daytime when you're least expecting it. We've been to event areas ourselves, and we found on numerous occasions, while you're setting the equipment up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you get phenomenal activity, like doors being thrust shut, voices in full-bodied apparitions. Yeah, you don't have to have it at night. But do you think maybe most individual investigators go at night because it's quieter for their recordings?
Absolutely. The nighttime investigations really are done because of that. It's quieter. You can use IR. Actually, you can use IR during the day, but it works better at night. Obviously, that's what it's designed for. But you can use it during the day, and there's ways to use that. Actually, is really good to capture evidence on a different level. But I would say, it depends on when people are experiencing things. You know, if someone says to me they're experiencing something happening at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, why am I going to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning? You know, it's relevant to the investigation, and every investigation is different. So to me, we same with, as I was saying, with the travel, a plan. We need to have a plan, you know. So when we do our investigation, we do our research, we talk to the people involved, we find out when it's most active. Now, the other thing I found, for example, as an example, is that during the day, most people are active. They're busy, they're working, or they're out doing things. They're not home to experience activity as much. When we had COVID and we were all locked down, people were experiencing a lot more at home during the day and even at night, because they were there all the time, rather than out socializing, running around and being busy, coming home tired, going to sleep. You know, they were experiencing and realizing something's going on here. And for them it was new, and it was quite, in a lot of cases, it was quite daunting. So yeah, activity is always there anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I understand what you're saying about COVID. We had an increase in members messaging us for cases during lockdown. But if you've got all that energy in a bad toxic relationship, for example, that's shoved together 24 hours in a house together, I'm not surprised that
Absolutely.
some people had an increase. Yeah, so it's
No,
interesting
absolutely.
to know that opposite parts of the world are having similar experiences, which brings me on to something else that I've two more points, and then we can go on to the questions. I
No worries.
find, yeah, libraries. What is it with libraries and hauntings?
Yeah.
Not only
Yep,
over
yep.
there in
You watch it.
Australia, here in the UK as well.
Yeah, it's everywhere. You know, well, hey, watch Ghostbusters. No, no, just, but no,
Because
look,
that's true.
yeah, with Melbourne, for example, the Melbourne State Library, it was actually the Melbourne Public Library originally, and it was open to the public. The only rule was that you had to go in with clean hands. Anyone over 14 could go and read the books, but you had to go in with clean hands, because Melbourne was such industrialized in the 1850s and 60s and such, is that everyone was working and they were dirty. You know, there was, but if your hands were clean, you could go in there and you could look at the books. And it became, for me, why these spirits are there, even if they didn't die there, it became a safe haven for people as well. So they could go there and just look, even if they couldn't read, because a lot of people couldn't read, they could look at pictures. They could spend time away from their everyday life. So, you know, for me, it's libraries are like a hub of a community, especially back in
Yeah,
the day.
and it's
That's
very well
something.
used, aren't they, as well? So they have constant traffic, which
Absolutely,
is an increase of energy.
absolutely. I think Melbourne, that library, I read somewhere that it was the third busiest library in the world. So, you know, thousands of people going through every day. And if you stand out the front, and I meet my people out the front there, there's people in and out all the time. It's constant. It's
Mm,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for that. The other similarity, markets. Why are they, even on opposite sides of the world again, why do they seem to attract gangs and violence? Because in London, we've got Billingsgate Fish Market, which was known in history to have the Craig twins that did a lot of their business.
I
Either
know the
they would
Craigs,
have
yes.
gang meetings or they would launder money
Yep.
through the purchase and supply of fish. I've got
Yep.
family members that were involved in Billingsgate Market back along. So yeah,
Oh,
I know
really?
quite a
Yeah.
bit about
I
the bad
I can
stuff that goes
imagine.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you
can
think
imagine. We
that's
had
across the world in
sorry.
other markets as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We had not at Vic Market. There's meat distributors there, but we have there was a meat market as well. A fishmonger, a butcher's market, and they had their own gang problems as well. With the laundering and such, I think what happens with a lot of the things back then, especially, you know, everything was cash. You know, you had the grocers would have their aprons with their cash in here and they would pull it out, you know. So a criminal could come there, you know, and launder money quite easily, right? But also there was extortion. So the gangs would go there and they would extort protection money from the grocers that weren't with them. they would, you don't want you don't want to have any problems. We'll look after you, but you got to pay us. And that happened a lot. And then other gangs would try to get involved, and there was these battle. And as I said, I think there was in the Vic Market, I think about 7 or 8 people, could be 9 people actually killed off the top of my head. So it was quite a vicious fight, really. And the gangs in I know the gangs in London were quite bad, but the gangs in Melbourne as well, they were very quite vicious. It was a very different time back then. And there's still, don't worry, there's still gangs and they're still vicious. I just think they have to be a lot smarter now, especially with the cyber security and the amount of video cameras that are around the cities.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that completely. Yep. That's my points that I wanted to raise with you. So I'm going to hand over to Christian now to go through the questions and anything else that he wants to add. So again, Bill, thanks very much from me.
Thank you for having me, Caroline. I really enjoyed it. A lot of fun.
No, that was a wonderful talk, Bill. I really I certainly felt the stories of the train station, the market. I certainly was quite fascinated by those, and I added a few questions in there along the way myself. So I just want to go back to perhaps an earlier point you were talking about with the Alamo being a place that, of course, you went to when you stayed at that wonderful hotel. Why do you think ghosts and spirits continue to hang around places when they're regularly investigated, and if anything, they're regularly cleared by, say, mediums and psychics and so on? Why do you think the ghosts still hang around there?
Well, the Alamo is a bit of a strange one. To be honest, you can't actually investigate the Alamo itself, right? Up until recently, you weren't even allowed to take a photo in there, but investigate the outside and around the Alamo, and I have done that, and on several occasions, and I've actually captured, gunshots and marching and a lot of that sort of stuff. You just have to time it right. Like I said, improvise, adapt. We use the old saying, there was a Clint Eastwood movie, Heartbreak Ridge, which is a war movie, and he says, improvise, adapt, overcome. And so we actually took that, and I used that myself, right? So, but a lot of places, because of the well, as you know, there's different types of hauntings. So you have your intelligent hauntings, but then you have your residual. So a lot of the time, I believe it's residual hauntings that we're dealing with in a lot of places where they're just repeating their actions. So they're not really spirits. Whereas the intelligent hauntings, why are they there? It may be that they, especially in a place like the Alamo, where the Alamo was a battle for 13 days. They were basically held up against Santa Ana, and it was pretty horrendous. And they were given no quarter. They were all executed, apart from the women and children and a couple of slaves. The energy would have been extremely high. It would have been embedded in the place. So yeah, I think what happens in a lot of historical locations, whether it be a hotel or an actual place like the Alamo, is that the energy that's involved with what has happened there, one embeds to create the residual hauntings, but sometimes with the spirits that are actually behind the actual intelligent spirits, there could be any number of reasons. It could be that they don't want to leave. They're still doing their job. They're still defending the Alamo. If we use the Alamo as an example, it could be that they don't know their past. And their battles every day. They fight that battle every day. I had one here in Melbourne at a hotel, which used to be an old police station. And we had a gentleman come through called George, and he was a constable. And I said to George, you've passed? And he said, I have not. And then he stopped talking to me. And we were back there about a week later. And I said, are you there, George? And he says, I am. He says, I have passed. So in that week, he didn't realize he was dead. In that week, he'd realized he was dead. And we never heard from him again. He moved on. So, yeah. So it may be that they don't know they're dead.
Quite possibly. I guess leading on from that, I mean, the question I put is when you were talking about the locations you were going to, is that I'm talking about planning ahead. So the historical, the cultural, is it spiritual factors that guide your choices and where you are going to go with your planning?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything. I love history. I'm a big history buff. I love to learn about the history of locations. It doesn't have to be paranormal. Obviously love the paranormals as well, so that helps. But there are places that feel spiritual, like for example, the National Soldiers Cemetery in Gettysburg, where the soldiers that died in the battle were buried there, and there's still people in some places actually be able to be buried there. But you walk into that place, and that's a spiritual experience. So you could feel, it's a serene feel. My wife, when we were there, she spent a lot of time in that cemetery. She was drawn there, and it was a really, for a cemetery, if you understand, it was quite an enlightening experience for her. She really felt connected, and it was. There are factors of spirituality in our choices, absolutely.
So when we talk about paranormal tourism, I mean, do you find that paranormal tourism is growing? I mean, I still often think that a ghost hunt these days that's advertised that has members of the general public come along is a kind of paranormal tourism topic. So in your experiences, have you noticed any trends and shifts that you've noticed?
Oh, there's a lot more people doing it. There's a lot more people doing it. My only bugbear is with paranormal tourism is that, and I'm not having on anyone in particular, but there are people that do not have the proper experience to run. Well, they're learning to be investigators, and then all of a sudden they're doing tours.
Yeah.
get some experience behind you. Like on the other hand, I also say that a lot of tours are run by tour guides rather than investigators. So you'll have locations where they have tour guides on, and they're doing investigation tours. So they take equipment out and they watch TV shows how to use the equipment or whatever, and they don't really understand how it all works. It's like anyone can hold a K2, and everyone knows how when you look at a video how the K2 works, but through experience you learn how the K2 works, if that makes sense. Whereas with our tours, I always say that we are paranormal investigators running a tour rather than tour guides running an investigation.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah. I know I'm not having go at anyone. I'm glad people are out there spreading the word, making it more accessible to people. All I want is people to do it once they've had experience.